So we've got a big problem here in this community right now related to messaging and information, especially in regards to priority of preparedness purposes. And this is something that I've been noticing trending in the wrong direction for quite some time now. Whether or not you follow legacy media, alternative media, social media, there's a lot of emphasis put on things that don't have an impact on you directly. And the things that actually do matter to you, especially regarding emergency preparedness purposes, are falling to the wayside and not being reported on, or being reported on in such a way that diminishes its impact. And this is something that I want to talk about because community networking becomes extremely important in this particular context. Because no matter what you follow, regardless of whether or not it's your typical legacy style media or if it's your alternative social media based media, nobody's following the correct formula anymore. They're chasing the algorithmic necessity of monetization, and it's not prioritizing the information that any of us technically benefit from when it comes to understanding our vulnerabilities. So I want to have this conversation because I've noticed it getting worse, and it is something that's affecting all platforms, not just your legacy media that we usually make fun of here in this community. When it comes to mainstream media, we already know that there's a narrative and an agenda, but generally we could have relied on some of these alternative sources to point us in the right direction, and they're falling to the wayside as well. So I'm going to use just the past few days as an example of this exactly occurring, so that way you can be better informed about what it is I'm referring to and what to look for in the future, and why you need to be more networked with actual preparedness mindset style communities in order to be better informed. So we just had three events happen this weekend that are stacking on top of each other in the backwards form of priority, in my opinion. First, we had the naval incident from Mexico, aka them ramming a sailing ship into the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. So that is getting prime attention from all sources, whether or not it's alternative, legacy, or social media accounts. That's the number one source right now because there's video evidence of it, which makes it more glamorized in the sense of people being able to watch this, situation unfold. And it also has the political kind of appeal to it from certain sources. And it is unfortunately the number one story right now regarding incidents of potential risk, right? Now, that incident was very unfortunate. I believe as of right now, two people have lost their lives. And of course, there's damage involving the ship itself, as well as the bridge and everything else. But regardless, that is being touted as like the most important thing for you to pay attention to right now. And then secondarily, we have a vehicle-based IED incident occurring in Palm Springs, California, where a person who clearly had terrorist intent attacked a fertility clinic and used a vehicle-based explosive device to blow it up. And at least, I believe, as of right now, we know one person has lost their life. And of course, there's lots of damage, including surrounding businesses. And unfortunately, based on the socioeconomic scenario in California right now, there is also robberies and things of that nature occurring directly thereafter. So, welcome to the third world, California. But regardless, that is an actual attack taken out or taken on by an extremist who had some level of aggression towards this particular fertility clinic, or at least what it represented. Now, this becomes a little bit more relevant to the territory of personal preparedness, right? You got to understand your security risks. You got to understand what the targets are right now based on extreme political ideologies and based on some of this more extremist behavior that's being promoted by a lot of the legacy media and other forms of media, of course, as well. And as of right now, we don't know exactly everything surrounding the situation, but we do know the person's name apparently at this time. And supposedly they had manifestos and all sorts of things regarding the fact that you never asked to be born in this life, so therefore you shouldn't be forced to deal with the consequences of that birth. Things along those lines. Now, that particular story is more relevant to preparedness because it is a personal security risk, and it demonstrates that these attacks are still happening and can happen at any point in time, just about anywhere. Now, the other thing that you have to keep in mind regarding that particular example is that people on X, as well as on other social media platforms, immediately started spoon feeding you the information that they didn't have access to yet. So before we had any actual evidence or before we had any actual verified information, people are already spouting lots of claims regarding the person's, origin or the reasons behind the attack or anything else along those lines that has since either been corrected or just obviously been left as potential misinformation, I guess, right? So you also have to wait and be patient when these things happen in order to get better information before developing an opinion or before getting the real truth, which we don't often ever receive. So that's the second thing that happened this past few days that has dominated the headlines regarding, preparedness and personal security and things along the lines of survival that has more relevance than the Mexican naval sail ship running into a bridge, but yet got less attention than said sail ship running into a bridge, which first one is an accident. The second one is a targeted attack by a terrorist, right? Should be a little bit more attention being paid to that, but instead we're paying more attention to a boat hitting a bridge on accident, which they're saying was likely due to a mechanical failure, but who knows. But then moving on from there, what actually has tremendous impact and what actually affects regular people like you and I regarding personal preparedness and things of that nature is the recent storm outbreak that just happened in Missouri and Kentucky that has just destroyed tons of property and left, I believe the count now is up to at least 27 people have lost their lives. And that is a tragedy. It's an emergency event in the sense of something that you should be prepared for, a natural disaster that can strike anywhere at any time. And it is going to leave some of these communities rebuilding for years to come. The property damage is through the roof. People lost their lives. These communities lost people they cared about. And it's a tragedy and an unfortunate circumstance. But that story is getting the least amount of attention because it doesn't drive the algorithmic viewership that monetization supports. And so, to me, personally, out of the three stories, the recent tornado outbreak in Missouri and Kentucky, and I believe it also affected parts of Oklahoma as well as possibly Tennessee. But regardless, that's actual information that you need to pay attention to and be understanding of. These storms are intensifying. They're hitting portions of the country that might not have seen storms of this violent of nature in the past. St. Louis took a hit from a tornado, right? Which is, a major metropolitan area. And these things keep happening and will keep happening. And you need to be prepared for these natural disasters more than just about anything else. We've seen with Hurricane Helene just how devastating they can be. And of course, the response thereafter not necessarily being beneficial for the people who are directly affected. So out of all these stories, the most important thing to pay attention to is what happened just now regarding natural disaster events in states like Kentucky and Missouri, and how you need to prepare yourself, especially if you're in those regions, to be better off in case that happens to you. It's why I got a storm shelter in my house, even though tornadoes aren't necessarily extremely common out here and don't necessarily wreak a lot of havoc. It's still something that's potential out here. There's still the potential for it to occur. And I didn't have a basement. So I did what I could to figure out a way to enhance my preparedness regarding that very likely threat that can occur anytime, right? And so the priority of preparedness is no longer top of the line for these news media outlets, no matter who they are. Fox News, you got to scroll all the way down if you want to talk about what's going on with the tornado devastation. Then you got to scroll up a little bit more to see what happened at Palm Springs regarding a literal bombing attack on a building in the country. And then at the very top of the page, you're going to find, the Mexican naval boat that had an accident. And then you're going to move on to CNN, right, to see if they're doing something the same way or differently. And no, it's pretty much the same exact thing, except for they even like to put stuff into quotations. So they'll say a bomb attack happened in Palm Springs, or they'll say multiple severe weather outbreak devastates, Kentucky and Missouri. Like they don't even want to actually commit to telling you what's actually happening. And then if you want to move to alternative media, that's like still more mainstream, but has more of an alternative flair. So websites like Zero Hedge or maybe the Epic Times or things like that, they're not even talking about some of these stories at all. And if you go on X and you start looking at what people are talking about, the naval ship thing, the Mexican ship hitting the bridge is getting the most attention over any of these other scenarios. Now, of course, there's good people out there sharing the other relevant information and trying to promote it to the forefront of the preparedness mindset to try to help people understand what's going on. But regardless, like when it comes to the major accounts and the things that people actually pay attention to in mass, it's the naval ship. An accident. where the bridge wasn't destroyed, the ship was wrecked pretty well, but it's because of faulty mechanics or who knows what else, a mistake. Anything could have happened there, but it's definitely not at the level of concern of a vehicle based IED bombing attack in the country in Palm Springs, California, where people lost their lives and there was a ton of property damage and robbery and looting of sorts happened directly thereafter. Great job, everybody. And then it definitely doesn't have the impact of these massive storm outbreaks that have lost lots of lives in the process and destroyed communities and will need a lot of rebuilding. And by the way, just to throw this out there, Grindstone, I know, is like already on the ground trying to get stuff figured out for what they're going to do to help people out there. So go support them because that's actually a group that gets their boots on the ground and helps people out, unlike some of these major charities out there like the Red Cross and sorts. So I'll link them down in the description and the pinned comment if you want to help out in any regards regarding any of the recent devastation there. But regardless, um, the information is not where it needs to be. You're not going to be able to find it as well. And it's getting worse, right? We already knew this was a struggle. We already knew that it was hard to find the relevant information for us here in the preparedness community and for things that actually mattered to us. But we are facing challenges right now of even finding it when we directly seek it out. And even the sources that used to have a little bit more relevance in the sense of providing you with that information that you weren't getting from the mainstream media aren't providing it to the same level or the same priority anymore either. So we have a huge problem. And some of the only ways to fix that is with community networking. You either need to you can get into like a Discord server like mine. It's free. Just go on my website, naturalprepper.com, and sign up for it there under community networking. And that way you can at least talk to people and post things that are actually relevant so that we can be aware of what's going on. The same can be said about locally. You know, you have local Facebook groups. I hate Facebook. I don't even use it. I think it's old and basically useless at this point in time, but it does have one function still, which is local community groups, especially because the older generation doesn't really use other forms of social media. So they're there and they're posting locally as to what's going on in your area. When we had our fires out here last year, we had a lot of posts going on in that local arena here on Facebook, right? And it gave us a lot of up-to-date information we weren't getting anywhere else. So those are things to look out for as well. And of course, just networking locally with your neighbors and your community and just getting involved with things will help develop that network on a local basis. But at the minimum, find some Discord servers, some like-minded groups that you can associate yourself with so that information can be brought up to the forefront that's actually relevant rather than focusing on these things that literally don't have a real impact and are at the heart of it just an accident. But for some reason, we're going to prioritize that over an actual terrorist attack and major storm outbreaks where people's lives were lost and entire communities have been ravaged. So that's where we're at. That's the current ethos around the media, regardless of what form it is, traditional, legacy, social, or alternative. It's not helping us out anymore, is it? So wanted to make this video to give you something to consider and to ponder and to give you some direction as to like what to do about it. And of course, leave comments down below for all of the other alternative sources that you find to be beneficial. If you use a particular media outlet that gives you good, relevant preparedness related information on a regular basis and is up to date and actually provides that information quickly enough for it to remain relevant, then please share that in the comments because there are some good, like prepper related information sources out there, but often they either are very far behind because they don't have like a newsroom working on these things on a daily 24-hour basis like some of these other entities have, or at the same time, some of these other even channels here on YouTube, just to throw it out there, are going to post things before any real information is available because getting there first gives you the dibs of viewership, right? You get a bigger audience because you're the first one to put the information out, which is part of the problem we're all dealing with right now because everybody's rushing to post a video or a take on something before they even really know what happened. And that's not beneficial now, is it? So, and you know what? Maybe I've even been guilty of that in the past, and I'm going to try to do less of it if that's the case. But regardless, let me know your thoughts down below. Give us some good resources. I have some of my own resources I try to use, but in vetting them recently, I'm just not happy where they're at and what they're providing. So I thought maybe you could help us out with that because many of you have ideas and resources that I might not be aware of. And of course, if you do want to support the channel, magicprepper.com has you covered for different ways you can do that, especially related to like affiliate links and things of that nature. So check that out, just because the more support we can get over here, the more we can do. And I am trying to do more, but I am just limited on resources currently. So anything else you need from me at all, you know what to do. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.